All right. Well, good morning, and thank you all for being here. Today is, I might say, is one of comfort. Comfort that we can go ahead with assurances to protect the most vulnerable in our society, to promote personal responsibility while securing information and the privacy of the citizens of Idaho. I really want to begin this press conference with a great thank you to the leadership. The Speaker and the Pro Tem, in fact, the Speaker and I talked a couple of times before. I think we talked every day after the session, at least once and sometimes twice. And then there's the Chairman. Patty Ann, come on up here. Sister Mary Patty Ann. And then there was one day when I think he, what did we say, you butt dialed me. Pocket dialed me. And I was talking, but he wasn't hearing. And then I found out why. But anyway, great leadership in being able to bring this together on a timely basis. 11 hours and 11 minutes, according to my watch, and that's the one I'm going to go by. Is a short session. In fact, special session. In fact, I talked to Jim Risch, former Governor Risch, on the last special session we had, which was in August of 2006, and he was bragging that how short his was. And so I tried to call him back this morning and remind him that his took until 11:30 at night, starting at 8 in the morning, and mine only took until 7:11, which there's another story in that. But I also want to thank Director Armstrong and his leadership of the Health and Welfare Department. Whenever anything like this is controversial, the burden always falls to those who are going to be required for the implementation. And for not only that, but for defining that implementation, for the establishment of public policy and good public policy. And I would tell you that standing tall was Director Armstrong from the very beginning. And I'm saying from the very beginning when we first received the information and what we had to do, starting clear back in January in the beginning of the session. And so publicly, I want Director Armstrong and his staff to know how much they are appreciated. And so with that, let me also say that the co-chairmans of the public hearing, that's why I referred to Senator Lodge as Sister Mary Patty Ann. We Catholics do that sometimes. But the control, the demeanor, the decorum, the respect that went throughout a very passionate and a very involved meeting yesterday, public hearing, and the length of it, I thought the co-chairman did a great job, and thank you once again, Patty Ann, Senator. So with that, I'd invite the Speaker to come up.
Well, thank you, Governor. I don't have a lot to say. We did leave some unfinished business at the end of the regular session. We were able to finish that yesterday. I would like to compliment the chairs of the committees for the way they handled this whole process. And also, to the members of the House, there were obviously, difference of opinion on the issue, but the central point was that this was about collecting child support for the kids in a way that holds the parents responsible. And with that responsibility, that keeps them off of the welfare rolls. And like I say, there were strong opinions on both sides of this issue, and we had a good process. Certainly, we encourage all to vote their consciences, and that's what they did yesterday. And I think that it was a good outcome. I don't want to look back to the way. To what got us here, but I'm very pleased that we were able to finish the way we did yesterday.
Pro Tem?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Governor, Speaker, If there's anyone who doesn't know this yet, these are a couple of great leaders, and it's an honor to serve with them. We owe a debt of gratitude to both of them for long, hard work. Tireless, well, it wasn't tireless. You got tired once in a while, I think, but
Just every night.
great work they did in taking an awkward situation and making the best of it in the form of this special session.
Thank
But thank you very much to
Yeah,
both of you.
I'd like to add, Representative Luker, Representative Daly, Representative Trujillo, Representative Kirby, and those that worked with the department to draft the amendments that were added to 1067. That was no small item. They worked together with the Senate and to reconcile those amendments, and they were able to do that in a way that kept the votes together. And anyway, it was all are to be commended, particularly Senator Davis for sitting down with the House and reconciling those amendments.
Okay, thanks. I got an email this morning. I've been getting a lot of emails since yesterday. I just thought I'd share the last line of this email I got this morning. It says, "You shall be spurned and scorned all your days for your undermining and disloyalty to the Constitution." My thanks also has to go to the legislature. Legislators who overwhelmingly saw that the accusations that were being made and are still being made are bogus. We did not compromise our state sovereignty. We did not neglect due process. We did not breach confidentiality. We did not abandon our beloved Constitution, either at the state level or at the federal level. We did a good thing yesterday. We did a good thing. There are a lot of people to be thanked, but I want to thank the citizens of this state for their support, and I want to thank those that they've elected, those 105 legislators who came and did a good work yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty Ann? Nothing? Rich? Bart?
You dare let me get started?
As long as you don't filibuster,
I don't
again,
do that, but I've been accused of not having short debates.
please.
I'll answer any questions
Okay.
that may be specifically directed my way or are improperly answered by others.
Grant? You have anything?
Thank you, Governor.
You're welcome.
Well, I think congratulations are in order to the governor and his team, Director Armstrong, and the leadership in the House and the Senate. This was never a partisan issue at all. Both parties worked extraordinarily well together, I think, on this issue. People who had differing views on the legislation certainly had every opportunity in yesterday's joint hearing and on the floor to express them. And, democracy works. From my perspective, the best possible decision was made after it was all said and done, but everybody had their say, and I commend the governor for calling this special session and getting this important work done.
Thank you, Grant. Okay, last chance. You sure, Dick?
Oh,
How about
one thing. I just wanted to let everybody know that because of the action yesterday and the passage of this bill, there will be no interruption in the services of delivering child support to citizens of Idaho. We're very pleased that we can now move ahead unobstructed, and I want everybody to understand that they need nothing to worry because we didn't lose any ground through this process. So thank you.
Good message. That's what we should have started with, I guess. But maybe that's what I was referring to in about assurance and comfort. Yes, Melissa.
There was a lot of frustration yesterday in committee and on the House floor especially that frankly said the department withheld information from lawmakers and that not everybody was informed. And there was a lot of debate about whether or not those accusations were fair. But with that in mind, is that going to change anything either between the executive branch or the department moving forward in relation to the legislature?
Well, as I said in my introductory remarks, we do as the administration and the eventual implementation as the executive branch of public policy that is passed on by the legislature. It is our responsibility in formulating that public policy to be as open and to be as descriptive and as informative as we possibly can. I disagree with many of those questions or accusations that were made about the information that was given out. In fact, at one point, and I should follow the speaker's direction here and not go back, but one of the problems that we had was certain folks got a hold of a piece of legislation that was intended to pass and intended to enforce the treaty that never passed the Congress. But that's the information they had, and the reason it didn't pass the Congress is because it would have violated our Constitution. In fact, when the director and I both read it, eventually when we kept asking, where did you get that information? Where did you get those facts? And when they finally showed us the bill, it was a bill that never passed the Congress. And so they were working, in some cases, they were working with the wrong information. Once we got the right information to them, they were still hung up on the old information, and that's still many of the pushback that we got. And so there's nothing we can do about that. But you know, I would say again, the discourse in establishing public policy is not always pretty, and it has a tendency to raise the anger and the passions. But it doesn't help when we don't always refer to those opportunities or to those debates in a gentlemanly and a ladylike way. And where it broke down a time or two yesterday, I would be the first to apologize for those people, because we're better than that here in Idaho. We can disagree, but that doesn't excuse our responsibility to do that in a constructive way. And I think that constructive way broke down a time or two yesterday. You want to add to that? Yes, Betsy?
Have you received the bill? Have you signed it into law? Or if not, what are your plans?
Well, I'm going to break with my normal tradition of not telling you what I'm going to do. And as soon as I get the bill, it's being engrossed, it's going through the process. And when I get the bill, I assure you, I will not wait 10 days to sign that bill. And if we'll make sure we notice you up as soon as that bill is signed. But I can't wait to sign it. Is that it?
Question,
Yes.
I don't know, maybe for Chairman Wills, Speaker Bedke, but regarding the bill that was tabled, 1067, I know you guys don't want to look in the past, but this was a $40,000 special session, and so I want to address quickly some concerns that were brought up with 1067. It was brought to the House side and sat for several weeks. If the concern or the problem was a lack of information brought from the Department of Health and Welfare, what happened in those weeks before it was actually brought up and tabled in committee?
Well, Chairman Wills can speak to the specifics, but this was a bill. I mean, we pass a lot. Well, every year there are several uniform law commission bills. They typically don't get this type of scrutiny. And so I think it was understandable that this was not taken up. And the way I understand it, there were some issues that were, that were raised, and they were trying to work out some of those issues, get some answers to questions. 2 weeks out became 1 week out, became 3 days out, became, oh, we got to do this, and it's the last day. And so what happened, happened. As to the $40,000 bill for a special session, when it became apparent that night that this was something that that needed to pass, there were several things that we could have done that night, including extended the session. And you that have watched, the legislature work in the past know that that had we extended the session that night or early that morning, we probably wouldn't have taken it back up on Saturday. So that would have been a legislative day that would have cost the taxpayers $35,000 or $40,000. We probably would not have worked on Sunday. So that would have been another day. We would have got back to work on Monday or Tuesday, that might have gone into Wednesday, each of those days with the same price tag. So I and others made a conscious decision that night that yeah, it did look like we had some unfinished business, but it would probably be better done by having all the fanfare and the rigmarole of a special session at one legislative day rather than to extend the session into the next week. That would have cost more. So that's my answer on the 40,000. If there's specifics on woulda, coulda, shoulda at this point. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could have done. I suspect it'll be a long time before this generation of legislators lets one go this far. I think that these Uniform Law Commission bills are going to get increased scrutiny, and that's probably a good thing going forward.
Chairman Wills, could you maybe address specifically how the committee handled this piece of legislation, maybe some of the discussions that were going on while the bill was at your desk?
Certainly. When it came on the desk, it didn't just languish there. I immediately had a senator and two representatives come to me with some concerns about the bill. And I said, okay, do your homework and get this resolved. Because we were about 3 weeks out then, somewhere in that area. And so they attempted to do that, but keep in mind that some of the things that they came back with that they wanted, how they wanted to resolve it, the federal government, it did not fit with what the federal government rules were under this particular plan. And so they had to readjust that. But to get the answer back from the federal government and to go through that process was not just a day or two. It took some time to seek those answers and so on. I do want to say that Health and Welfare, and I would really want to clear the air here, Health and Welfare absolutely answered every question they were asked during the entire process, from the beginning to the end. And they provided us with the details that were necessary to do the homework. But that being said, it does take some time to find out whether or not this was an unusual case. Normally, we can just make amendments and attach them and not have a big issue over it. But with the federal government involved in this process, that took some time. So that was a laborious process. And by the time they got their answers back and so on, considerable time had gone by. So it was still on the desk and waiting for those answers. But I'm not blaming anyone for that process. It's just that when you have that time frame, normally that's not an issue. But in this particular case, dealing with two government agencies, that really made it a different situation. So the dynamics were completely different, and that took longer time than I anticipated even. I will say that those that wanted any answers, and I heard this yesterday again, those that wanted answers and so on that felt they didn't get them, I believe that those answers were provided, and I think that, I know for a fact that there was a conversation with the federal government a couple of days before this that everybody on that committee had an opportunity to be involved in to find out the answers from the federal government. I heard this morning in a committee meeting from a different committee, one of the representatives said, I want you to know my vote probably would have been different if I hadn't have taken that opportunity that afternoon to be on the phone on a conference call with the federal government and find out, get my questions answered. But that individual was one of only 3 that did that. The rest of them did not have that opportunity or didn't take the opportunity to listen to that conference call. I think had they done that, I think things would have changed and there'd have been a little different vote process. So that's what happened. But I thank you for the question.
Question for the speaker. Admittedly, it's somewhat of a
Bill, let me respond on the special session. Once it became obvious that we were going to have to call a special session in order to finish our work, going back to what the speaker said, I'll bet I had 10 other issues that they wanted me to put on the special session. And all issues worthy of debate, all issues worthy of the urgency of a special session. So what the speaker said about continuing in the regular session, very easily all of those issues would have come to the forefront. And so it may have extended the session by a week or more instead of a single day. So in looking back, it was the right thing to do, and limiting it to a single issue was the right thing to do. And I think it actually, in the long run, as the speaker has suggested and the pro tem has suggested, saved us money. So, to the speaker.
yes, admittedly, it's somewhat
Well, there's a few things that I'm not going to do, and Monday morning quarterbacking is one of them. What we try to provide in the House is a venue for a thorough discussion of the issues. And I think that that's my responsibility as the Speaker to facilitate that. I think that that happened. I think that each of the members were able to vote their conscience, and that's what the process is all about.
Yes.
For the Speaker or for Chairman Wills or Chairwoman Lodge, yesterday during the hearing, Representative Scott was sort of dismissive of the changes that were made to House Bill 1 and suggested that all they did was provide cover for 4 of the 9 Republicans on Judiciary and Rules who had voted to table it and voted to pass it. Was that a fair assessment of the changes made to the legislation?
I'll take that one. I don't think that it is completely fair. The issues, even though we're talking about enforcing child support orders, and this is something that we've been doing across state borders and international borders for quite some time. As this issue was elevated, then there were increased concerns about due process and about the security of the data. Though the new amendments address those specific points, and I don't think that, and as they should. Those are two very sacred things, and their interest in putting increased emphasis on those two areas was very understandable.
Speaker, on the floor yesterday, we heard a lot of people talking about having a gun to their head on both sides of the debate. Do you feel like this process made it okay for someone to vote against this, or do you feel like the repercussions demanded a certain thing?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. If you're going to participate with the other states and other countries, there needs to be predictability, and there needs to be uniformity of how it works. So there's predictability. This is very common in other areas of law, and in this area, it's understandable. We're dealing with a class of citizen that is trying to get out of pain, and so making that collection process as efficient and as fair as possible is what this was always about. And because keep in mind, these families that are collecting this child support, but for that probably have to go on to welfare, and then increase the costs in that area of government, rather than holding those that are responsible to raise and pay for their kids. And these shouldn't be all that difficult of concepts.
One more question. We have time for one more question.
So concerns over Sharia law were not raised, at least during testimony on the floor and during the public hearing. However, they were raised when Senate Bill 1067 went down by some lawmakers. I'm just kind of curious to, I guess, with you, Bethel, why you think that is. And do you think that we're going to maybe see follow-up legislation stemming from some of those fears that, maybe down the road? I'm just kind of curious to get your feedback on that. From the governor or speaker.
Well, first off, most of those kinds of issues came up when we were dealing with the wrong information. We were dealing with the wrong enabling legislation that never passed. That's when those issues, and that's why I say, when after Director Armstrong finally, or did ask the question, and he was finally given the response of, where did you get that information? Where do you get these facts? And they showed him the piece of information that they had. It was the wrong one. And it was one that we both agreed we would have voted against. We wouldn't have even brought it to the legislature if that had been the piece of legislation that the Senate and that the Congress took up. And so, I can fully understand. if any of these issues come up, our responsibility is not just passing and setting into a tattoo form for the code of the state of Idaho, is to monitor exactly how that implementation is going, and if corrections are need to be made. You know, we handled over 350 pieces of legislation this year, and I would guess that probably a good portion of that was renewing or revisiting past legislation that was passed and trying to bring it up to speed and bring it up to date. So it's not unusual, and it is our responsibility to continue to monitor the kind of public policy that we put in place to make sure it's accomplishing all of the expectations that we had when we first passed it. So thank you very much for being here this morning, and once again, thank you all for the great work. Thank you. Thank you.